Okay, let's dive right into this incredibly intense piece of micropoetry that packs a massive spiritual punch in just one single sentence. Welcome to today's explainer, where we're going to unpack a really brilliant intersection of gritty, visceral street imagery and deep spiritual symbolism. It's pretty rare to find a piece of writing that does this much heavy lifting in such a tiny, confined space. But in just a handful of words, this source material we're looking at today manages to capture this totally complete narrative of crisis, realization, and the desperate, urgent need for salvation. We're going to explore exactly why this specific blend of physical danger and spiritual vulnerability is so uniquely gripping to read, and how it masterfully communicates the heavy theme of urgent repentance. Just listen to the rhythm of these words. You need to run, run, run. You're at the end of a barrel of a loaded gun. Tell me what you need to do. Run, run, run. You lost faith in the Most High and His Son. You need to run. It just hits you right out of the gate, doesn't it? That repeated rhythmic word, run, establishes this palpable physical danger immediately. It's breathless, it's panicked, and honestly, it demands our full undivided attention from the very first syllable. The author isn't easing us into some kind of relaxed philosophical discussion about morality. They are throwing us directly into a high-stakes emergency. Section 1. The visceral threat. So there's absolutely no slow build-up here. The songwriter plunges us right into an active, life-or-death scenario. You are at the end of a barrel of a loaded gun. That terrifying imagery creates an immediate sense of mortal peril and inescapable urgency. Think about the psychology of this exact moment for a second. You aren't just walking through a bad neighborhood. You aren't just facing some vague, distant threat that might happen tomorrow. You are at the absolute, finite end of the barrel. Right in this very second. It's an incredibly claustrophobic image, right? All your options have suddenly narrowed down to this tiny, dark circle of cold metal. It's immediate. One tiny movement, one fraction of an inch of pressure, and it's all completely over. And this brilliantly illustrates the dual nature of these lyrics. They're operating simultaneously on two completely different frequencies. On one side, we have the physical layer, the literal, mortal danger of a loaded weapon pointed directly at you. But on the other side, we have the spiritual layer, the dire, catastrophic consequence of a soul in crisis. The genius of this poem is really how it uses that immediate physical threat as a perfect, gripping metaphor for an unseen yet equally deadly spiritual reality. It takes something totally abstract, like spiritual decay, and makes it feel tangibly, sharply terrifying. Moving into Section 2, Symbolism, the loaded gun. Let's see how this intense physical danger builds into a much deeper symbolic meaning. This loaded gun isn't just a piece of cold metal. It symbolizes imminent, unavoidable danger. It represents a terrifying tipping point right before absolute destruction. It's the looming consequence of straying terribly off course. The author is using the most extreme, heart-pounding physical threat imaginable to represent exactly what happens when a spiritual life falls into acute danger. And that tipping point is crucial. It's that breathless millisecond of tension right before the hammer drops. In the context of the poem, the trigger isn't pulled by some external enemy, but by the weight of our own spiritual choices. Which brings us to Section 3, the spiritual crisis. So the lyrics don't just leave us suspended in this physical anxiety. They quickly drop the metaphorical veil, revealing the exact spiritual root cause of why the subject is facing down this barrel in the first place. The crucial realization hits us with this line: you lost faith in the Most High and His Son. Bam! This single, powerful phrase identifies the core crisis of the entire narrative. It isn't about owing someone money or crossing the wrong person on the street. It's a profound, devastating loss of faith, and with it, a complete loss of the divine protection that comes from that faith. The literal gun is just the symptom. The internal loss of faith is the actual, fatal disease that brought the subject to this dark alleyway of the soul. Let's break down exactly what that loss means here. This phrase signifies a complete and utter disconnection from the Most High. It means the sudden, jarring loss of spiritual protection and guidance that previously anchored the subject's life. And ultimately, it results in total, unmitigated exposure to the world's existential threats. By losing faith, the subject has effectively stripped away their invisible spiritual armor. They haven't just, changed their mind about a philosophical concept. They've left themselves entirely naked, vulnerable, and exposed to the absolute chaos and destruction of the world around them. Here is Section 4, the call to repentance. Facing this crushing dual crisis of physical and spiritual danger, the text doesn't leave us hopeless.
Instead, the lyric commands a forceful, immediate reaction to pull us back from the brink. Let's look at repentance. It's defined as the urgent act of recognizing spiritual failure and immediately turning one's life in a new, righteous direction to avoid destruction. Now, while that specific theological word repentance isn't explicitly written in the text, the repeated, desperate command to run perfectly embodies this exact concept. It's urgent repentance set into frantic physical motion. It isn't just feeling regrets. Actually, scratch that. It's way more than regret. It is actively turning rapidly away from sin, pivoting away from the danger, and sprinting with everything you have back toward grace and safety.
The author enforces this urgency by forcefully demanding, "Tell me what you need to do, run, run, run." The songwriter uses this incredible rhetorical question to corner the subject, and us as the listener really, forcing active acknowledgement of the situation. You have to admit the reality of the danger to yourself. The poem insists that passive realization just isn't going to cut it. Immediate, decisive action is the absolute only chance at survival. No one else can answer the question for you, and no one else can run this race for you. Section 5, Escaping the Barrel.
Let's bring all these incredible thematic pieces together to map out the urgent, desperate journey of the soul as laid out in this brief lyric. Notice how it effortlessly walks us through an incredibly clear sequence of salvation. Step 1, realize the danger. You wake up from your numbness and realize you're staring down the dark end of the barrel. Step 2, identify the cause. You diagnose that deep spiritual void, acknowledging that you lost your faith and your footing. And step 3, take urgent action. You run, executing the physical act of repentance. It's a masterful distillation of theology, providing a crystal clear step-by-step prescription for surviving an acute spiritual crisis when literally everything is on the line.
And the pacing the author uses is absolutely critical to selling this urgency. The word run is repeated in rapid staccato bursts of 3 throughout the text. Run, run, run. It acts exactly like a pounding, terrified heartbeat in your chest. It perfectly captures the anxiety, the sudden adrenaline flush of realizing your life is in danger, and the absolute necessity of immediate spiritual course correction. This isn't a casual, leisurely walk back to faith. It's a desperate, lung-burning sprint for your spiritual life.
I want to leave you with this final, provocative thought, based directly on the intense lyric we've analyzed today. When you find yourself at the end of the barrel, will you run? When your own moments of lost faith inevitably lead to your own spiritual crises, will you recognize the danger in time and urgently sprint toward redemption? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep analyzing the powerful words around you and never stop learning.